What is up, Internet? My name is EddiePlaysGames and welcome back to ETACT. And today I want to talk about a game that you may not have heard of, and probably for good reason. Today I'm talking about Sonic X-treme, a Sonic game that was supposed to come out in 1994 for the SEGA Mega Drive, but got moved to its add-on, the 32X, but then got moved to the SEGA Saturn, and finally got cancelled. So, let's begin with where it started. It was late 1994. Head of SEGA Yuji Naka just arrived back in Japan from an overseas trip to SEGA Technical Institute, an American division of SEGA. When he arrived back at SEGA, they immediately started working on ideas for a brand new Sonic game, one of which was called Sonic Crackers, which utilized a tethering mechanic similar to the likes of Knuckles Chaotix on the 32X, but was scrapped and used for that game instead. Nonetheless, they still thought it was a good idea. So they eventually started work on a game called Sonic X-treme in 1994. It was planned for the SEGA Mega Drive as a side-scrolling platformer, similar to the previous Sonic games like 1, 2, CD, and Knuckles. But as the age of 32-bit gaming soon hit the scene, they had to act quickly, knowing the Mega Drive wouldn't cut it for the new market. So they designed 3 different pitches for the game. The first one was Sonic 32-bit, the second one was an isometric view of a Sonic game, and there was also Sonic Mars, the name Mars being the reference to the planet, the chocolate bar, and the code name for the SEGA Saturn during its development. Sonic Mars was of course the chosen pitch. The development team included Michael Kosaka, the executive producer and team leader, Chris Sen, the producer and CGI artist, and some other dudes. But in mid-1995, Kosaka unfortunately resigned and was replaced by Dean Lester, who was a bit of a douche. But then Lester resigned and got replaced by this other douche called Manny Granillo. The lead programmer, Don Goddard, was replaced by Ofer Allen, who's apparently really hard to work with. Okay, hold on. You fired someone who cooperated with the other employees and replaced them with someone who was really hard to work with. I mean, was he better at programming? Was he worse? I don't know, I just feel really bad for Don Goddard now. Jeez. Since the 32X was struggling commercially, the development shifted again, now planning to release on an upcoming cartridge console called the SEGA Saturn, otherwise known as Project Mars. SEGA of Japan's goal was to release the Saturn on time, so SEGA Technical Institute had one job: get the game out by December. When Yuji Naka was shown what they had worked on, he simply shook his head and said, "Good luck." And for some darn reason, the game was being developed on 2 different game engines, which sounds completely absurd and of course didn't work. And the team was split up into 2 teams. One team was led by Robert Morgan and Chris Coffin, who focused mainly on the bosses, and the other team was led by Chris Sen and Ofer Allen, and they were working on other content using a PC, which they were hoping would be compatible for the Saturn. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. Other staff members included composer Howard Drossen, designers Richard Wheeler and Fei Cheng, and artists Ross Harris, Jason Kuo, and Andrew Probert. So the game was going great, they barely had anything. According to Mike Wallace, the producer of the game, the theme of the game was to take basic Sonic and add the ability to go into and out of the screen. On paper, it sounded great, but when they actually started to implement it, the addition created some additional challenges they just weren't prepared for. So in March of 1996, SEGA of Japan representatives visited STI to evaluate their progress. According to Chris Sen, the key visitor was President Nakayama, though Mike Wallace recalls Executive Vice President Soichiro Irimajiri. The executive was unimpressed by Sen and Allen's work, as the version he saw, ported from PC to Saturn, ran at a very poor frame rate. Sen and Allen attempted to show their most recent version, but the visitor was taken away before they had the opportunity to do so. But they were very impressed by Coffin's boss engine and requested that X-treme would be reworked around that. But the thing is, they were afraid that they would have to start the whole game over again, because their new deadline was the 1996 Christmas holidays. In April of the same year, SEGA Executive Vice President Bernie Stoller approached the 2 teams and offered any help he could to beat the deadline. At Mike Wallace's request, Bernie started working on Sonic X-treme on the Nights into Dreams engine, a game engine used for another game by SEGA. But when Yuji Naka found out, he was like, "Hey, if you're gonna stop using my game engine, I'm gonna quit SEGA and I ain't never coming back." So the threat worked, and therefore they couldn't use the engine even if they asked. But then again, it was probably because there was another team using the same game engine. So they stayed at the office working 16 to 20 hours a day. In fact, this was so serious that Chris Coffin moved out of his apartment, cancelled his lease, and moved all of his belongings into his office. That is crazy. That is commitment at its stupidest. I would never have to do that if I was trying to beat a deadline. I mean, I've got plenty of time to work on Escape to Imagination. I mean, it's coming out in November. And I got plenty of time. In May of 1996, an actual playable demo of Sonic X-treme was shown at E3 for people to play. But by that time in history, it felt practically pointless to continue because their team morale was so low and the turnover was extremely high. And apparently they fired an artist because they were disrupting the team. But by this time, Chris Coffin, the guy that made the engine used for Sonic X-treme, had contracted severe pneumonia. This was apparently because he was working himself to the ground and he was practically praised for his efforts, even by Yuji Naka. But by the same time, Chris Sen, the producer at the time, became so ill that he was told by his doctor that he had at least 6 months to live. But he survived afterwards. And now that both teams didn't have a leader, and they had 2 months to finish the game, though there was practically nothing except for the playable demo, Mike Wallace cancelled the game in 1997, although Sega said that it was delayed, but later on it was confirmed that it was cancelled, and Sonic X-treme faded from existence. Until in February in 2015, where some Sonic fans managed to find the code of Sonic X-treme and started making several playable demos. So there you have it. After 2 resignations, 1 threat, 2 doctor's appointments, and 3 development shifts, Sonic X-treme got cancelled in 1997. Sonic fans had really high hopes for it. Heck, they even say that its cancellation caused the SEGA Saturn success. Quite frankly, I agree with them. So, I can't think of a question of the video, so I'll just give you a random fact about Sonic. Did you know that Sonic the Hedgehog wasn't supposed to be a hedgehog in the first place? He was initially supposed to be a bunny, but after they decided on the hedgehog design, his name was supposed to be Mr. Needlemouse. This is no joke, look up the history of Sonic. Anyway, this has been ETACT. Thank you for watching. Thank me for providing you with some quality entertainment. If you want to see more, then please subscribe and like, and if you want any suggestions for topics that you want me to see, then comment down below. Please tell me. I really want to know. Anyway, you guys can think of a question in the video for yourselves, if that's okay. Anyway, thank you for watching. Peace. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Kind of.